today who's working on a really awesome project that's about to roll out. Wes, where are you? You want to come up here with me, Wes? There he is. He's working with an organization called Venture, which I didn't know is Venture until recently. Yeah, give it up for Wes. Wes, you and I have known each other for, I mean, it isn't super long, but at this point, like, we've been in each other's spheres for the last several years, and kind of your story in terms of like how you guys have started Venture mirrors in many ways a similar timeline, but in an entirely different side of things to what we've been doing at Lux. So tell us about Venture and tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah, so Venture is a product of a ministry that we've created called Lightworks, and our heart and passion is to build platforms that make disciples. And to kind of riff off of some of the conversation earlier, how do we build the wells that people will use to meet Jesus? And so our goal is to fill the gaps in the process of making disciples, from digital evangelism to discipleship to multiplication. What needs to exist? I'm a data scientist, AI background myself, and so we have a team of people that are building these digital products to support that process. And so Venture is a digital discipleship platform that is really targeted towards supporting people that are new Christians, which is the range of maybe they've just have an affinity towards Christianity, and supporting them by helping them find and take their next best step using AI tools and content recommendations to help them actually take steps forward in their faith, and then be able to share how are they doing, and for people in their for the community managers and leaders and other digital evangelists. And so our heart and background is from missions. My wife and I are both co-founders of this, and we worked with Crew in their global or in their digital strategies work for about 6 years. And so we have a heart and a passion for building products, but also to see that Jesus is glorified and praised across the face of the earth. And so we'll build whatever needs to be built so that people can come to know Jesus and to grow in their faith.
Well, I love that. And I want to dig in a little bit to this, like, real specific. You're literally just like listening and coding like the whole time that you're here this week, because you guys are getting ready to roll out and test out a really awesome new adventure. And so, like, as a person who pastored in a physical church, right, and we created discipleship pathways and all of those sorts of things of like helping people become discipled. Like, if you're in ministry for any length of time, you all have this issue, right, where you're like, someone's like, what do I do next at your church? You're like, well, you need to go to 201 next. And they get it 201, and you're like, you find out that their marriage is falling apart, and you're like, man, maybe 201 doesn't actually fit, because discipleship is deeply, deeply personal, and discipleship is individual, because if you're helping people take their next step in obedience to Jesus, checking off boxes doesn't work. And you guys are coming at it in a way to say, hey, what would it look like to come from like the content world, but not make it a linear track that every person has to walk?
Yeah, so Venture is all about helping people find and take that next best step. And so we've got a curated library of resources that we can keep adding to over time. But the goal is, wherever you're at on the journey, we want to help you take that next step. And so as you find these people and you are doing ministry, like, people are all over the map. They have all kinds of background and history and context. And so as much as we want a standardized class or a course online to work for them, the reality is that they have a history, a story, a context, and a circumstance that they're currently in that is just really hard to account for with that 201 session. And so what we do is we use a lot of AI to break down what are the best resources for them from across the body of Christ, and then digest that down so where they can get all of the critical ingredients to grow in their faith in 5 minutes or less a day. And then they can access it from anywhere in the world. And so the goal is ultimately that each person can be supported on that journey based on where they're coming from, and we can help them actually grow.
Okay. So Wes, help ground this thing for me a little bit, right? Because we're coming into the world of AI, virtual reality and mixed realities and all of these different things that we're walking into right now. And in the church world, a lot of that stuff is actually relatively overwhelming, right? Yeah. How that's going to actually impact the church, how quickly should we jump on board? Do I need to go buy digital property in VR chat right now? Right. Like, is that something my church should be doing alongside Nike? Like, what exactly am I supposed to be doing? So answer this question for me to help me ground it. Let's say somebody is using the Venture app tomorrow morning. Let's just fast forward. You're 5 or 6 years down the road, and you really have this thing rolling. And I wake up in the morning and I open up my Venture app because you want me to open it up each morning, right? There's some element. It's like, this is my companion for discipleship. What do you see me experiencing as a follower of Jesus, even a new follower of Jesus, maybe, when I open up that app? What's that experience going to be like?
Yeah, so it's going to start with a check-in. Just how are you doing today, right? Because our goal is to mirror what happens in real life, one-on-one discipleship. As we have a relationship, the first thing is like, Mark, how you doing today, man? How's things going? And so we'll check in with the person, and then based on what they say, the entire experience can change that day. And so the daily experience will look something more like we want to give them the critical ingredients that we talk about for spiritual growth and development, and that's more than content. That's what do you need to learn about today? What are things that we can help you engage your own heart? What are things that look like you can actually do tangibly? And so that looks like just a little bite-sized thing that might be like, hey, Mark, here's some content to look at. Here's a 1-minute clip from a video. And then we'll take you to the next step, which is, okay, how did that actually hit you? And like, tell us about that a little bit. And then in light of that, what are some next steps that you can take? And so we're using AI in some appropriate ways. And we've got lots of safeguards in place, and we've been trying to process and discern what are the healthy ways to use AI and what are the things that we want to steer away from. And so we've done a lot of work in that space, but part of it is that we can actually use it to help to streamline that content and then to respond in a personal and relational way. And then when there's times where it's like, this is better not for a machine to do, that we actually have somebody that's a community manager or a real person that can reach out to them and say like, hey, let's have a conversation about this, right? And that ultimately, 5 or 6 years from now, this is meant to be an augment to their spiritual journey, to where it doesn't replace anything else, but it's instead like, as you have a discipler or a mentor, we can come alongside. But that's not an opportunity for everybody. There's just not enough warm bodies that are either.
The church hasn't always done a good job of making disciples that can make disciples, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we want to have this as a resource where it can help fill that gap. And so whether you've got a church in that physical area or that you've got a church online you're attending, we can point you as a next step as getting plugged in to some of these different communities and opportunities, whether it be a stream, a church online, a church in person, kind of you name it. That's all part of that next step building mechanism that we're building in a venture.
Yeah. So I got a sneak peek at it already. So let's just say hypothetically, I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth first thing, I open up Venture, it says, how you doing today? And I'm like, actually had a fight with my daughter last night. I know I got to talk to her after work today. I jump in the shower, I jump back out, I open up Venture, and Venture's like, hey, here's a clip from a sermon just about restoring relationships. Mm-hmm. Here's a scripture about not exasperating your kids and also about disciplining your children. Maybe this is going to help you in that conversation later today. Maybe it's going to throw me like a Bible verse, maybe something I can pray about throughout the day as I'm preparing my heart. It's my companion in prepping for that conversation I know that I'm going to have with my daughter whenever I get home that night. And it's a place, maybe I can check in with my mentor or my friend or my dad, right, that day and say, hey, I think I have to talk to her tonight. This is where I'm going to be. And it's already helped guide me to some of those conclusions whenever I'm kind of lost, just don't know what to do with my kid that morning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly what we're aiming to do, is to be that practical relationship as much as like an in-person discipleship or a one-on-one discipleship. You just don't have that time. A lot of what we've heard from people that we've done early testing with has been like, as much as I wish and long for that person to have as a discipler, they just don't have the time or the access to always be there. And so this is meant to fill that gap too. It's like, you can't always have a Mark or somebody else in the community to be there. But then can we fill that gap and just be one added layer of support and then help to make that process easier for community managers, pastors, staff members to say like, you know, maybe there's going to be those real relationships regardless. And so how do we come alongside and augment those? Create conversation starters, spark questions, spark dialogue, create conversation, because relationship is one of those critical ingredients we want to incorporate as a daily element in that as well.
Yeah. And what I love about that is not only, right, is sometimes your spiritual mentor, your spiritual father and mother, maybe they're just not available that morning when you needed the help. But also, you got to get to work, and quite frankly, you don't have time to sort through all of the YouTube videos and blogs that you're going to get if you Google search help me and my kid are in a fight and I don't know what to say. And quite frankly, me as someone who's leading a church family doesn't even really want people to Google that because I'm kind of terrified of what they might get in return, right? If they're going to look at Google anyway, I'd much rather them have something that I can trust who's curating that content that's coming back to them. It's going to be biblically based. It's going to be gospel focused. It's going to be encouraging them towards restorative relationships and things. And so it's really a tool in two ways, right? It's actually saving someone from straying into something that maybe wouldn't actually be all that helpful. And simultaneously, it can also step in when maybe your pastor or your spiritual mentor or father's busy.
Right, and even on that same note, as much as we want to long and serve the individual, that's kind of our mission and our aim. We also want to support the mentor in the process as well, whether that be a church, whether that be a streamer, whatever that is, with giving transparency into like, how are they doing? Because it's such a unique, kind of daily, adaptable experience, we want to be able to report that back. And that's a lot of the background and context that I come from, is actually being able to deliver how are they doing spiritually in quick snapshot ways, whether that's into a CRM, whether that's via like, hey, here's a push notification to your mentor or advisor, like, hey, they're really struggling today. Like, you should reach out and text them. So that way that like their personal experience can also help trigger and notify the people that are their fathers or mothers in the faith to engage and ask a question and be curious. And so it's all about supporting that existing relationship that's there. And when there's, we want to come alongside in that. And whether that's through giving you new insights into your own congregation in mass, a dashboard of what that looks like for your community, or whether that's just on an individual basis of like, I have this person that I'm mentoring, and they just notified the system that that they're really struggling right now. And so reach out to them.
I love that. In the world right now, especially with tech, there's a lot of things as pastors or mentors or whatever that we don't like, but we can't change. Amen? Lots of things that I don't like, but I can't change. And the church can and has the opportunity to just hide from those things, belittle those things, demonize those things. What I really appreciate about US is like, I don't know the full story, right? But you guys have taken substantial risks to step out and say, instead of leaning away from it and allowing this new generation of artificial intelligence to destroy people's lives, we're going to seek to find the redemptive purposes inside of it. We're not going to run from it. We're going to lean into it, and we're going to see what Jesus wants to do with it. And I just appreciate that so much with what you guys are doing and what you're working on.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, our heart is, how do we harness the power of digital to make disciples in every single way? And so that's doing it with conscious wisdom and discernment, but it's a risky space to be in. And so we're going into the bleeding edge and learning a lot by pioneering in these spaces. But one of the things we need to continue to learn in is from the shared experience of everybody here and everybody online as well. We've got a lot to learn. And so we'd love to hear from you guys about what's your context as a streamer or as a digital ministry or whatever else the case may be. We'd love to learn from you, learn from your experience and how we can come alongside, because our goal is to build products that serve your users, your members, your congregation. And so our heart is the same heart as yours, and how do we come alongside of you? And so we just love to learn together. And so that's why I'm here this week, and just excited to get to learn from everyone here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wes. Thank Wes for being here with Venture. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks.